All right, Pop. You got any Bering Sea stories north of?
Well, one of the more striking ones is as we entered into the Bering Sea through the Alaska Aleutian chain. It was freezing out, and we were in a storm, so the waves were breaking over the ship, and that began.
That
to
was
freeze
the icebreaker USS Burton Island.
on the USS Burton Island, and it would freeze on the ship, and so once we got into quiet water, in fact, I guess into ice on the Bering Sea, we were frozen over with inches of ice on the ship. And when we got a chance, we took every tool we had and started knocking off that ice to get it off the ship.
Did the officers do that, or the enlisted men?
I don't know. I wasn't much of an officer in the sense that I would do it myself rather than telling somebody else to do it. But one of my experiences up in the Arctic was taking a landing craft with I think 3 other sailors and a chief into unexplored Banks Island. That's north of Canada. And once in a while we hit bottom. In other words, the water was shallow and the waves were kind of hitting us. And we were going in to take a battery to the captain and the pilot of the helicopter. And I had had trouble with the landing craft earlier at Point Barrow, where we got broached and got up on the beach and got off by it with a bulldozer. So that night at midnight, I said, "Chief, take her in." And he said, "You're the senior officer, you take it in yourself." Which was no big deal, except that I had no confidence that I knew what to do. This is an unexplored island, midnight, dark, hitting bottom. But we got in, dropped off a battery for the skipper and the helicopter pilot, and we got them. We got back, and they finally got back with the helicopter. But that was fun. A couple of times I rode the helicopter in going up through the inside passage on the west side of Canada. But that was pretty neat. So there's all kinds of stories. Before we went into Bering Sea, we were crossing the North Pacific, or the Gulf of Alaska, it may be called. And we got into a storm that literally the ship would roll past 45 degrees to up to 60 degrees, back, plunge. That went on for a couple of days, and I enjoyed it. But some of the guys, they needed to stand there watching with a bucket. And one of the bosun, I remember him. He needed a bucket. I was pretty proud that I didn't get sick at all. But they couldn't serve meals. You just get an apple out of a bowl or some such thing.
What was the mission of the Burton Island one time? It kind of had a secret mission, didn't it?
Not a secret mission.
Well, didn't you guys weren't you guys the support for a submarine going under the ice?
Yeah, but that's after the thought that the purpose of the icebreaker was it was called the Barracks, the Point Barrow Resupply Expedition. So we would go ahead of the rest of the ships and make sure that the ice was broken up and that they could get along the coast to Point Barrow. And that's what we did. And usually it wasn't too bad. The summer ice we were able to manage. Later or earlier in the Bering Sea, in the winter, we couldn't get much past Nome. Nome is about the middle latitude of Alaska, and we could get about that far in the Bering Sea, and then the ice would be 10 feet thick or so. In fact, one night we drifted across the international date line into Russian territory, and the captain got us into his cabin first thing in the morning. He said, "We're in Russian territory, and we got to get out of here." And we got out, but the ice is so thick, and the wind that's drifting the ice, you're at the mercy sometimes of those conditions.
Were you responsible for getting a screw broken one time?
Leaving 2 times, I guess. Leaving Nome in the winter, I was the officer of the deck, and the people that know say that we ended up with a propeller that was shaking, and I guess they call it something
Cavitating?
shaft, but we were having trouble in the ice, and I apparently had the ship at that time. As we roll in the ice, and we do sometimes to break through the ice, the propellers come up and can get into the ice itself, and that happened to us in the Arctic in the summer. We had a submarine with us. That submarine was painted white to prevent or to kind of keep it from the Russians seeing an obvious submarine in the Arctic. But our captain was the first to go on the submarine, that submarine was the first to go under an ice floe. And we had about a mile ice floe. The submarine didn't have any sonar on the upper deck, so they couldn't tell whether they were under ice or not. So our helicopter was up, and they dove under the ice. That's probably an hour later. The helicopter reported they're free. We can see them coming out from the ice. They were looking down, and they could see the submarine coming out, and so the submarine surfaced. But it's my understanding that was the first time that a U.S. submarine had gone underneath an ice floe. So that was kind of interesting. But later, maybe 2 weeks later, we're still up there in the Arctic. And one morning, again, I was officer of the deck, and I was trying to break through a ridge of ice. The ridge might have been 10 feet high and maybe 8 feet. The captain came up into the conning tower there and said, "Hey, what are you doing?" I said, "I'm trying to get through this ridge." He said, "Well, let me do it." And so he'd go full blast and hit the ridge and back down maybe 100 feet and make another run at the ridge. Well, about the third time he did that, he was backing up. And I said, "Captain, there's ice coming up under the stern." He said, "Very well." But at the time he was going ahead 1/3 on the engine order telegraph, but we were still going back a little bit. And so he went ahead 2/3, and we were still going back, and crunch, crunch, crunch. We'd hit the ice with the propellers, and the captain said, "Go back and take a look." And I'd never done that before, but in the clear waters, I went back to the stern, and I could see that the blades were broken off of one propeller.
Oh.
And that was shocking. I went up and told the captain. He had icicles hanging from his nose. And it was an interesting experience. I said, "Captain, the propellers are broken off." We had 2 propellers and 3 blades on each propeller. And he said, "Very well," stoically. And I wonder what his emotions were at the time. Whether that ended his career in any sense, or ended my career in any sense. But that was the end of our cruise. I wondered if some of the crew didn't think that I was a hero for breaking the propellers and we could go back to San Diego. Well, the consequences were that we had to round up the submarine, get it behind us, and head out from the ice and head south. And about a week I don't know, it took us a week to go down the coast, the Bering Sea, and then the coast of Washington and Oregon and California. But we arrived in San Diego, and about midday, and again, I was officer of the deck. I don't know why I got the choice times, but so we're coming into San Diego Harbor, and I'm not a multitasker, and I kind of forgot. I don't know how you could forget, but at least in the usage of the propellers, one of them wasn't available. So I'm going into dock, and here I've got one propeller, so I couldn't quite maneuver what I might normally be able to maneuver. And I found myself circling in the San Diego Harbor.
Like a one-legged duck.
Boy, yeah, just paddling away, and that's a good analogy. And so the captain I couldn't get it in to the dock. And the captain took over. He docked it gracefully, and Mary Beth was pregnant. She was down on the dock. Then I found myself, after we docked, up on the wing of the conning tower and looking for Mary Beth. And the captain was at my side, and he said, "Well, we look like hooligans Navy today." And I said, "Yes, sir." And that's all I said. To his credit, he never brought it up again. But in the personnel records, I never did see my personnel records, and I wondered how much the senior officers and the captain and the executive officer had to say about how I handled myself. But it was bad. It was a bad scene. And in retrospect, it should have been easy. But then there was another time. Things could go wrong for me as an officer. They went wrong. We were coming in one evening, and again I had the deck, and we were a narrow channel before you come into San Diego Harbor. It's in an area that I used to fish with my brother, Ballast Point. And we're coming past Ballast Point, and it's dusk, and my eyesight is questionable anyway. And all of a sudden, the captain at my side reached up, sounded one blast, and ordered right full rudder. And the ship coming out, which I couldn't see because all the lights, the green and red and white lights of the city there, I didn't see that ship coming towards us. And that's how bad my eyes were, I guess. And but the captain, we went a little bit to the right, and the ship passed us by. And to the captain's credit, in a minute or so, he said, "Okay, you take over again." He had a lot of confidence in, I guess, in himself to control things, that he didn't hesitate to let us young officers con the ship. And so there were a lot of great experiences. Not all of them good experiences, but there were experiences that